we're now going to start our question and answer session with Magda. Just to introduce her properly, Magda Balazimska is professor and director of the Allen School here at UW. Her research interests are in the field of database management systems. Her work focuses on data management for data science, big data systems, cloud computing, and image and video analytics. Prior to leading the Allen School, she was director of the eScience Institute, associate provost for data science, and the director of the Advanced Data Science PhD option. She has served as co-editor and co-chair of the VLDB Journal and Conference and has been recognized many, many times over, including the inaugural VLDB Women in Database Research Award, ACM Sigma Test of Time Award, NSF Career Award, and much more. And also just speaking as a student who's been here for 5 years, she's been a really fantastic person to look up to. So welcome, Magda, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, everyone. It's really great to be here. And yeah, thanks, everyone, for spending your Saturday together.
Great. So how this is going to work, I have some questions that attendees have provided in advance, and we'll also ping pong between those and any questions that come up from the audience now. So if you want to ask a question, please either type it in the chat window and we'll read it out loud for you, or you can use the Zoom interface to raise your hand and then we'll call on you. But just to start, I think a lot of folks were curious about how you got started in computer science and how you got started in computer science research. So.
Oh yeah, those are good questions. Yeah. So, oh, and by the way, and thanks Lucy and Emily for organizing. I also wanted to say that. So this is really, it always takes, leaders to organize an event for people to actually come together. So thanks for doing this. So in my case, actually for a long time, I didn't know I wanted to do computing. I guess when I was in high school, I could already see that any essays, any reading, writing projects, any spelling projects were always a challenge for me. I actually did not know that, but all through my family, there are many people who have dyslexia. There's many, and even people who don't have dyslexia all have some kind of writing challenges. And to this day, writing is always kind of a difficult task, I think. But other than that, I don't think I ever knew. Like I would say, like being in high school, if I had to do math homework, I didn't mind. If I had to do I did take some programming classes. If I had to do some programming, I didn't mind, and this was more fun. If I had to do some science, that was okay. And if I had to write an essay, like, oh my God, that was kind of so that's kind of all I knew about myself, I would say, in high school. And then I tried to take some of those tests, the personality tests that is supposed to tell you what you're supposed to be. And it actually told me I should be a bus driver. And I thought, okay, somehow, I don't think so. So then the test also told me that I should become an optometrist. And I thought, that sounds nice, be optometrist. And then actually my parents told me, oh my God, if you become an optometrist, you'll be bored to death after 1 year. So I'm like, okay, maybe. And then they convinced me. So my dad said, well, if you don't know what you want to do in life, you should become an engineer because then you can do pretty much anything. And my mom told me, well, if you don't know what you want to do, anyways, after you graduate, you'll be programming because that's where the world is. So you might as well learn programming. So kind of putting the two together, I did a degree in computer engineering. And that was nice because one thing I discovered is once I started to take computer engineering classes, I just really enjoyed them. So I think that was the main, so that's kind of how I got started in computing. In terms of research, this is not something I was also thinking about doing, but at the university I was at in Canada, they actually had some programs for women to get engaged in research. And I applied just because it sounds like an exciting program, and you got to work in Ottawa. I was in Montreal, so going to another city sounded exciting. So I applied and I got in, and that's how kind of I started to do research projects in general. I still didn't know if I wanted to do a PhD. And what happened at the end when I was finishing my undergrad and I did like a MEng, I did kind of like it was not quite an MEng, it was a 2-year master's, but kind of instead of a senior thesis, you do you start your master's directly. It's like a combined bachelor master's program. One of my friends in mechanical engineering applied out of, from Montreal to Stanford and got into Stanford. And I thought that sounds like a really exciting thing to do. You apply to these universities in the United States and then you get to go, and isn't that exciting? And that's why I decided to apply for a PhD program. And I didn't know any better. I actually only applied to MIT, Berkeley, and Stanford, which is totally crazy, but there was no advising, so no one told me to do otherwise, and I got fortunate to get in. So a lot of it was just kind of this random, let me try something because it sounds exciting decisions.
Yeah, that was definitely true for me too. Cool. So from the chat, someone is asking, what are some important skills that you have noticed CS students often overlook?
um, that students often overlook. I think that sometimes CS students, especially PhD students, might become too focused on their own research. And I think it's actually also very useful for a career in general to take classes outside of your own area, to attend seminars outside of your own area, like go to the colloquium, go to some of the faculty interview talks, just to have kind of a broader knowledge than purely your own area. I think that's one thing that I would recommend, that students often overlook, or some students, not all of them, but some students will not participate in group seminars or kind of withdraw and work more like alone by themselves on their own project, which is fine, but you get so much more knowledge if you do engage in seminars, if you do discuss your papers with people, if you read your colleagues' papers and critique them, then you end up like just basically in your own lab, if you read the submissions that other students in your lab are preparing, and you give them feedback on those submissions, by doing that, you will learn a lot about their area and your knowledge will be greater.
And just for context for folks who aren't as involved in research, the Allen School has mostly weekly colloquia these days, or bi-weekly, twice a week. And they're open to the entire department. And these days they're over Zoom, and you should definitely listen in.
And I think that's a good point. So I was kind of answering that first question from the perspective of PhD students. If I think about undergraduate students, important skills that students overlook, I think there's less to overlook at the undergraduate level. But one thing that I highly recommend at the undergraduate level is to try to do internships or research projects in a variety of areas, because that's the time where you don't have to commit for 4 or 5 years. You can do one internship in a Microsoft, you can do one internship at Tableau, you could do one internship, or you could do a research project doing natural language processing, you could do another research project doing synthetic biology. So I think now is the time, at the undergraduate level, is the time to try a couple of areas to at least see like what kind of computing you like the best.
Yeah, personally, it took me ages to figure out what area, so definitely getting breadth is helpful.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have advice for sort of early career or incoming freshmen, even in terms of like making the most of their time in the CS program?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. So I recommend definitely when you choose classes, take the classes that you think are most exciting and most important. Never take classes, like never shy away from classes because you think they're too hard. Because now is the time for you to learn it, and it's much easier to learn anything through classes than other ways. So be brave, take the classes that you think are exciting and that you think are important. That's one thing. Don't try to do just the minimum to get by. The second thing is, try to get an internship every summer or a research project. Try to do something in your area. So participate in the career fairs. If you didn't manage to get an internship through the career fair, talk to graduate students and see if there's something you could do over the summer. And you can also look outside of the computer science department. So eScience, for example, has a annual program called the Data Science for Social Good. And we hire about 16 summer interns into this program. So that's another program you can apply. So you can also apply kind of outside of computer science, just because having any kind of experience, whether it's work experience or research experience, is just so valuable. So I think that's very important. And also, like as a CS student, try to participate in things that are available. Like if there are any clubs or any other programs, try to be involved and also take part of in that.
Yeah, and sometimes there are internships for even, just as a personal note, sort of people who explicitly don't have past research experience, so like REUs and whatnot. So things to look out for. So just as a kind of sort of have there been any research projects, not necessarily CS, that have like really inspired you or changed how you think?
I think a lot of the work is inspiring. Honestly, like when I started, even my PhD, the number of like the research was exciting, but now it's like 10 times more exciting. So for example, when I recently visited the natural language processing group and they were telling about the research, I mean, it's so cool, right? It's really exciting and cool. I was talking to Georg, who does synthetic biology, and that's just like the coolest. Talking to Suin about computational biology, and you're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. So I think there's just pretty much anyone I talk to, I find that their work is really exciting, which is why I recommend to people, it's good to just attend seminars and see what around you is interesting, because the number of opportunities that computer science used to be focused on, okay, systems work, theory work, programming languages, software engineering. But now we still have that core, which is really exciting and cool, but we also have all of these other areas around that take computer science in broader areas. Like, I mean, we have some faculty who fly to Africa and India to work with rural communities, which is also really exciting. We have kind of, you know, people building robots, and those robots, some of them are kind of the traditional type of robots, but some of them are like robots that help, you know, feed people who have disabilities. So just really the coolest thing all over the place.
Yeah, that's really, really neat. And there's so much cool stuff happening at the Allen School. So
There's definitely a lot of cool stuff. Honestly, when I was giving I gave a talk recently to the prospective graduate students, and I had just had so many exciting projects to choose from to just show them a couple of examples.
great. So a question from the chat, which is kind of related to sort of figuring out internships and research, is how do you suggest sort of balancing those out? Like, say some folks want to try out software engineering versus doing research. Do you have any recommendations there?
So I would say that I think that internships are super valuable, because if you do an internship where you want to do an internship, well, you will write a lot of code, because that's going to give you just tremendous experience upon which you can build no matter what you do. So having some kind of internship where you get to apply kind of core computer science skills in, it doesn't really matter what domain, that just spending a lot of time doing it, because computer science, like programming, is like playing the piano. You just need to do it a lot to become more fluent at it. So I definitely recommend trying to get one of those kind of highly technical internships where you get to write a lot of code if you can, and that gives you a very strong foundation. And after that, I would say the one thing is you can do research during the school year, so you can do 499 types of credits. So you might try to do an internship over the summer and spend like the summer at one of the, you know, big companies, or a great internship, and then maybe spend some time during the school year also doing some research. I would say if you're starting like as a freshman, I highly recommend focus on your classes and focus on acing your classes and doing really a good job. Try to get a summer internship, which might be hard, I think, at the beginning, but any experience is better than no experience. So it doesn't have to be at Microsoft or Google or something. It could be really any company, even, you know, your local veterinarian clinic that needs some support. So any kind of experience is really useful. I would say in second year, focus also on your classes, try to do well, do a lot of classes, but definitely try to seriously apply for internships. I would say third, fourth year, probably optimal for doing research, because by then you have already taken 300 level classes. So you have that basic knowledge, and it can be really useful in the research lab. And then you can do both internships and research.
Great. That sounds like really helpful advice, and advice that I wish I had had when I was younger. So great. Does anyone have any questions from the audience right now? Okay, here. If you could turn back time, is there anything you would change in your career trajectory and choices, and why, if so?
That's a good question. So I would say there isn't much, because, for example, I went to do a computer engineering degree. If I had known better, I think that a computer science degree might have been a better fit for me, because the one challenge in the, but I didn't go to UW or MIT. Like, I went to École Polytechnique de Montréal, and one of the limitations in that degree is that we didn't have enough theory. So I find that I always wished I had a stronger theoretical background in computer science. So I guess that's the only thing. Like, I wish I had a stronger background in theoretical computer science that I never managed to get because of my choice of undergraduate degree in computer engineering as opposed to computer science. And then that kind of pushed me into doing a PhD in systems, which I love and I really enjoy. But I wish I had maybe a little bit more background in theory in general.
Right.
So that's something. So I don't really, but I wouldn't change anything though, because when I did my undergrad, that's where I met my husband. So I'm really happy that worked out really well for me. And everything else, you know, they're kind of all exciting opportunities. So I wouldn't change it, but I think that, yeah, I would say if I had more time, I would like to have had more time to take some more classes in theory.
Right. It's one of those, you don't have wrong decisions, just different ones.
There's just different ones, yeah.
Cool. So I guess maybe talking a little bit about sort of being a gender minority in CS. And have you experienced people sort of doubting your abilities or passing you over for opportunities? And if so, how did you handle that?
So this is true, and this is still happening. And I find that The hardest part is that it's happening in the following ways. Like you go to a meeting and everyone is pitching ideas and everyone is suggesting things. And sadly, until today, if you are different from everybody else, for whatever axis of difference it is, um, by default, your ideas are not good. And by default, you are wrong. And you have to prove that your idea is a good one. And you have to prove that you're right. Versus people who are in kind of the majority, they are by default right. And by default, their idea is exciting. And this is something that I recommend that people observe. And it happens not only in our at work, but the same thing happens at home. So I like to tell people discrimination starts at home. Next time you're doing dinner, of course now it's going to be a while, but next time we do dinner with our family, I recommend observing who gets interrupted. And when people speak, who gets like the nods of approval and who gets the disapprovals, right? And you can see right away, like often you see this kind of dynamic when grandma says something, everyone's like, yeah, whatever. Grandpa says something and everyone's like, yeah, this is right. And sadly, and something you will sadly notice in kind of in your business setting as well. And something that is very difficult to address because it's like if people interrupt you, like I now, for example, if I see people interrupting, I'm going to call them off on it. I'm like, okay, I've been trying to say something, but I keep getting interrupted. And I noticed that just telling people at the beginning of a meeting that we should be mindful of the dynamics of the discussion resolves 99% of like interruption problems, because people nowadays are mindful and they want to do the right thing. They might do it without realizing they're doing it. But then if they do it, you can tell them. And that's great. But if they simply assume your ideas are wrong and they just assume that what you're suggesting is not a good idea, you can't call people on that. You can't tell them, hey, how come when this guy says something, by default it's right and everyone's excited, and when other people say something, by default it's not exciting and it's not right, because then you have this kind of vicious circle, right? That someone suggests something, so people are excited, so people act on it. So of course the idea works, so the people get credit. Versus if you try to pitch something, people disregard it, they don't act on it, then the idea doesn't work, right? And you don't get credit. And I find that this is probably one of the challenges that we're facing right now, is this very subtle dynamic. The only thing we can do is just try to observe it, try to tell people that this is happening so that they themselves can become mindful about it. Because if people realize this is happening, they can often try to just be kind of more careful about it.
Right. And especially for us who are, becoming increasingly senior, doing our part to help out those who aren't. So, great.
Right. So, yeah.
So a question from the chat. In your opinion, what are some of the major differences between industry and academia for computer science?
That's a good question. I would say, for example, last year I spent a year on the BigQuery team, and this year I'm back, I'm back in academia. In terms of career trajectory, so if we compare, like I'm going to, let's say in both cases, either I'm going to do a bachelor's degree and go to industry, or I'm going to do a PhD degree, go to industry, versus I'm going to do a PhD and then stay in academia. There are several differences. Some are kind of logistical, and some are less kind of more in terms of the quality of the job. Fundamentally, if you go down the path of going to academia and becoming a professor, the advantage is you just simply do not have a boss. Like I noticed that when I was at BigQuery last year, like I actually had a manager who actually cared if I worked on A versus B. And that was just so weird, because since I started my PhD program in 2000, like I just never had a manager, never told me what to do. Like in academia, you do what you want to do, period. And even when you're a PhD student, you fundamentally do whatever you want, and your advisor advises you on maybe turning left or turning right, but you're moving forward. And that is really, I think, exciting, the ability to work on whatever you want. And even if you have a project, within that project, to really push it however you want. I think that's really exciting, and I have not seen that in industry. The second thing that's super exciting about academia is that people are, at least the professors, they're more independent of each other. So each professor kind of builds up their own research agenda, their group. So there isn't, like, there's no turf wars really between faculty. I mean, in rare circumstances, there might be that two faculty happen to work a little bit too much on the same thing, and there might be some friction, but there's kind of an easy way. The faculty can just move in different directions. So a lot of the time, there's a lot of collegiality because people work on their own things. If people are successful, raise money, that doesn't take away money from others. Versus I find in industry, there's a lot more kind of the politics and the fact that there's one pie and people try to get after the pie and you have to figure that out. So those are, I would say, kind of two, I would say, of the most fundamentally positive things about academia is that you get to work on whatever you want and you get to build your own research agenda so you don't have to kind of fight it off with others. Exciting things in industry is that you get to actually build something that by default will be used by millions of people around the world. Like you make a change to a big product and then like your aunt and uncle can use it, or like just kind of, so that's tremendously exciting that it's actually like a real deal and a real project, like a real product that everyone uses. The second thing is you just get paid like insanely much more money than in academia. Like I think when students graduate, like my PhD who go to industry probably make as much money as I make after all those years in academia. So you definitely make just significantly more money. And you also work, I think it's kind of a trade-off that also often in industry, because you work for a bigger company, then I find at least people seem to have a little bit more of a work-life balance in terms of working kind of more reasonable hours. In academia, what happens is like everything, we are always the bottleneck. Like I could always do more. There's so many things I want to do. I can do them. There's nothing that stops me except me. So we tend to often work more hours just because the opportunity is there. But I would say those are kind of like, on the other hand, they're pleasant hours, right? Because you get to work on whatever you want.
Yeah, I think we're always continually learning how to do work-life balance.
Yes, I actually joke that I think I figured out work-life balance. What I have not figured out is the work-sleep balance.
It's that triangle.
It's a triangle, yes.
So another question from the chat, which is I think one that comes up very frequently for folks, is how do you figure out if a PhD is something you'd like to pursue, and especially if you didn't get a chance to do research as an undergrad?
Oh, I would actually say you just do it. You don't have to think about it. And the reason why is because if you think about it, if you're graduating and you're 22 and you're going to work until you're probably 78, that's a lot. Like that's a very long time, right? You're going to work for very many years. If when you're 22, you apply for a PhD program, you get into the best program that you get into, right? And then you go and you try it. Then for 2 years, if you love it, or if you like it, then you just kind of stay and you do it. If after some time you realize, this is just not for me, then you get a master's degree, which is super valuable. And then you work and you still have until 78 years old to do all your working. So I would say don't think about whether you want to do it or not, just apply and see what happens.
I actually did the reverse, where I went into industry for 3 years and then realized, nope, this isn't for me, and then went back to grad school. But so basically just, reevaluate as you go.
And actually there are many paths, yes. And actually that's another thing that last year when I was on the BigQuery team, there was a summer intern on the team, just fantastic, fantastic person, but she wasn't having a great time. And I basically told her, honestly, I'm like, I understand how like you feel you don't belong here. It's because you don't belong here. You need to go to a PhD and you'll be doing just amazing things. And you won't be working on kind of the team you're working on. So I know I'm actually excited. She just accepted. She's joining us in the PhD program in September.
That is super
excited.
It's like
that worked out really well. Yes. So I just highly recommend to people, if you're thinking you might want to do a PhD and you're hesitating, just do it, because you won't know it until you try it.
Yep, definitely. Cool. Let's see. So just as a question on like finding collaborations, how do you sort of seek out collaborators and colleagues who care about fostering sort of an inclusive environment?
I mean, that's a good point. So for the way I do it is kind of, I find my collaborations more or less randomly, like when things just come up. It's just what happens is once I start to collaborate with someone, if I find that this is not working out and I don't, like maybe I just don't get along with them, or there's some other friction, or there's something happening, then I just kind of find ways to end the collaboration and move on to other things. And there are ways to do it politely by just not having time to work on this collaboration. Like if you have a collaboration that you want to end, and if you just simply stop putting any time into it, and it kind of falls apart. And then I just kind of would let it fall apart. And often that's what happens. I mean, there are many good people. Sometimes it's just a question of match. So if there's someone who kind of I don't work well together with them, I just don't work with them. And we both might be happy working separately with other people.
Cool. I guess one question that's coming in is what do you think is like sort of special about the Allen School and what it offers for compared to other institutions?
Oh, I mean, there are several things that I really like about the Allen School. One is the quality of the research is exceptional, right? You can only find that at one of the other top three schools. Um, and that's really exciting. The quality, the quantity of exciting research is really high. And so that means kind of when you come here, what's exciting about, and I would say this is true for the Allen School and other top programs, is if you go to a top program like here, no matter what research group you join, you will be working with people who are the best in their area, who are the best, who publish great work. You will be working with also great students. So like every single one of your colleagues will be someone who's very high quality, who can give you really good advice, who can help you out in different ways. And that I think is really exciting. We also have a large number of really cool projects all over the place. And again, this is more at the PhD level. In terms of the undergraduate level, I think that actually our program is very strong in terms of the kinds of courses that we offer and the quality. And I think that this is for the undergraduates. I feel we actually have a sweet spot that we have a lot of faculty who really deeply care about education and providing a good, kind of being good instructors. We actually have this that every quarter the director will kind of pull the list of faculty who got a 4.7 course evaluation higher and broadcast it to all the other faculty and saying, hey, congratulations. So I find that people in the Allen School at the undergraduate level, for the vast majority, care very deeply about teaching and doing a really good job at it. And that's combined with, we have a lot of people who are really good at what they're doing, so they can bring some of those research ideas into their classes. So I think that overall we have a really strong program, a very solid program in terms of the content, a lot of great instructors. We also have this nice team of teaching faculty who teach a lot of the intro classes, and their like whole goal is to do the best job they can at teaching. And I think this is kind of an exciting foundation. And then kind of in your third, fourth year, you can be also involved in research, and you will get to work with like people who are the best in the world at whatever they're doing. And that will also position you, like if you're graduating from the UW and apply to grad school, I mean, that's a really good foundation that you have.
And I guess one last question to wrap up. Do you have any suggestions for sort of dealing with imposter syndrome, or basically people are feeling less confident than they should be, really?
Oh yeah, no, this is important because we all feel this way. So I like to tell people kind of several things related to the imposter syndrome. First of all, that everyone is imperfect. Like no matter who, the person that you admire the most, they are also imperfect. They also don't know very often. They might speak with confidence, but often they don't know either. Um, and kind of fundamentally, once you realize that other people don't know either, but they will just be kind of willing to look it up and search and struggle, then that helps a lot. The analogy I like to make is to tell people that we're all like glaciers. That if you look at a glacier, there's like the part above the water, and that's all the awards. Like if you read my bio, you're like, oh my God, Magda is so awesome, right? But then I'll tell you, I just had a paper rejected. I just had like this grant proposal that was rejected, right? I was working on this project and I really didn't know like what's the best way to solve it. Like all of this is kind of the bottom part of the glacier, right? Like I work with my students, we might end up publishing this great paper, but that hides all the many hours at night where like nothing was compiling, nothing was even like, just kind of all falling apart in pieces. And I think it's just important to realize that everyone is a glacier like that. The other thing I highly recommend is actually get off of social media, because social media is like the peak of the glacier, but emphasized. So everyone's like, and actually that's the other thing. For example, I could probably, if I had more time, post here a picture of me and the kids at Disneyland. And it's exactly the picture that you expect, like happy family, eating ice cream, everyone is excited. But then what you wouldn't know is actually my daughter came down with a really terrible cold. So the kind of third day in Disneyland, she woke up with 104-degree fever, her face red and swollen. And we basically had to cancel the rest of our plans. I urgently flew my other daughter and my husband back to Seattle, and I even called and made an appointment. Like, my little one is on her way to Seattle. She will have the flu tonight. Can I already make an appointment? And that's kind of the truth in life in general, that we see the beautiful picture for others, like ice cream, everyone happy, and we don't see the, you know, the 48 hours pajama party that I had with my older daughter in the hotel and her throwing up all over the floor. So, right, this is kind of normal. So, the other thing that I like to tell people for the imposter syndrome is that as imperfect as you are, you're like the best we have. So if you don't do it, then who is going to do it? And I think it's important to think about it this way.
Great. And I think that's a great note to close on. Everyone is great here, and we are excited to have all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time, Magda. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone.